When you make dua, you are not merely whispering into the air, you are entering into a divine interaction that begins the moment your heart turns toward Allah. There is something profoundly transformative about realizing that every supplication is registered in a realm where nothing is overlooked, nothing is dismissed, and nothing is ever lost. Even when you see no immediate change in your circumstances, something begins shifting in ways far deeper than what your eyes can detect. We tend to measure progress in the visible world, assuming that if nothing moved here, then nothing moved anywhere. But in Allah's design, the unseen is often the first to respond, and the visible follows only after its foundations have been quietly prepared. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have about dua is assuming that silence means rejection. We assume that a delayed answer means our plea was too small, too unworthy, or perhaps that we ourselves were undeserving. But this mindset misses the entire psychology of divine timing. Allah's silence is not a dismissal of your request, it is a refinement of His plan for you. Sometimes the response must be delayed because the world around you is not yet ready to receive what you are asking for. Sometimes you yourself are not yet ready to carry the weight of that blessing. Sometimes the people connected to that dua must be aligned, shifted, changed, moved, long before the answer can reach you. And sometimes Allah withholds an answer not to deprive you but to deepen you. Think about how dua forces the heart to stretch beyond its usual boundaries. It teaches trust, it cultivates surrender, it softens the ego, it reminds you of your dependence, and it anchors you to the one who controls everything. This inner transformation is not an accidental side effect of dua. It is part of the answer itself. You are being shaped by the very act of asking, even before you receive what you asked for. There are blessings that can only be carried by a heart strengthened through longing, through patience, through repeated return to Allah. The dua is preparing you for the blessing, and the blessing is being prepared for you. At times, we become frustrated because we want life to move according to our timeline. We assume that our urgency should translate into immediate results, but urgency belongs to the creation, precision belongs to the Creator. What you see as a delay, Allah sees as the exact moment that will protect you, elevate you, or redirect you towards something far better than your limited perspective can grasp. There are countless moments in life when what felt like a painful silence eventually reveals itself as the greatest mercy. A prayer you thought was ignored was actually being redesigned. A path you thought was closed was actually being cleared. A heartache you thought was punishment was actually protection. And so, even when you feel that nothing is happening, something always is. The dua you made weeks ago, months ago, or even years ago is not dormant. It is moving through a process that you cannot see, but a process that is nonetheless real. Every time you lift your hands, an unseen world begins to shift. Every time your heart whispers to Allah, a response is written. And every time you surrender your hopes to Him, your life is being arranged with a wisdom far beyond your own. So the next time you make dua and feel like nothing changed, remind yourself, everything has already begun. You may not see it yet, but it is unfolding with a timing crafted perfectly for you. Trust that your dua is never lost. It is living, moving, and being prepared just as you are. One of the most difficult realities for the human heart to accept is that delay does not mean denial. When a dua takes longer than we hoped, we instinctively interpret that delay as a sign that something is wrong, either with our request, with our effort, or with ourselves. But this reaction exposes how deeply we are conditioned by immediacy. We expect life to mirror our sense of urgency, forgetting that Allah's timing is not bound by our emotional clock. What feels slow to you may actually be precise, perfectly measured, and deliberately structured to protect you from an outcome you cannot yet comprehend. There is a profound wisdom in the way Allah delays certain things. Think about how carefully a craftsman prepares every detail before unveiling his work. Now, multiply that precision beyond imagination, and you will begin to understand the divine timeline. Sometimes the answer to your dua is tied to events that haven't unfolded yet. Sometimes it depends on people who haven't crossed your path yet. Sometimes your own heart needs to mature, heal, or detach before you can safely receive what you are asking for. If the blessing arrived too early, it might overwhelm you. If it came too late, it might miss the purpose it was meant to serve. Allah sends it exactly when all the conditions around it and within you are ready, and many times the delay itself is a form of mercy. There are paths you once begged for that you now thank Allah you never walked. There are people you thought you needed, but whose absence later revealed itself as protection. There are dreams that would have consumed you had they been granted prematurely. When Allah delays, He is not depriving you. He is filtering your request through His knowledge of the future, His knowledge of your capacity, and His knowledge of what will ultimately bring you closer to Him. This delay also exposes the intentions of the heart. Dua made consistently over time reveals sincerity. Anyone can ask once, but returning repeatedly over weeks or months or years shows that your desire is not impulsive, it's rooted. It's anchored, it's meaningful, and Allah responds to that persistence. He responds to that depth. He responds to the person who doesn't treat dua as a transaction, but as a relationship. Because at its core, dua is not about demanding a result, it's about reinforcing a bond. And if you look closely at your life, you will notice something remarkable. Many of the things you received after a long delay became more meaningful precisely because you had to wait. The waiting built perspective, the waiting taught gratitude, the waiting removed entitlement and replaced it with humility. And humility is the very soil in which blessings take root. So the next time you feel frustration at the delay of your dua, try reframing your perspective. Instead of assuming Allah is withholding from you, consider the possibility that He is fine-tuning something for you. Instead of asking, why is this taking so long, consider asking, what is Allah shaping within me during this time? Because there are changes that only occur during the wait, changes that are necessary for the blessing to be sustained when it arrives. And ultimately, remember that Allah's timing is not random. It is purposeful, calculated, and deeply compassionate. When the answer finally appears, you will realize it could not have come a moment earlier or later. It arrived at the only time that was truly right. So be patient with the delays, because they are not delays in the divine sense. They are preparation, they are alignment, they are protection. Trust that what is written for you is already on its way slowly, deliberately, and with a precision that your heart will one day be grateful for. There is a dimension of dua that many people overlook, and it is perhaps the most transformative. We often approach dua with the mindset that its purpose is to change our situation, to alter the world around us, to bring something into existence or remove something from our lives. But in reality, one of the first things dua changes is ***. Before it shifts your circumstances, it begins shifting your inner landscape, your mindset, your emotional patterns, your spiritual orientation. What you ask for externally often becomes the catalyst for an internal evolution you didn't even realize you needed. Every time you raise your hands, you are acknowledging your own limitations. You are admitting that you do not control outcomes, that you do not possess the power to orchestrate every detail of your life. This recognition alone reshapes the heart. It humbles it, softens it, grounds it. It clears the illusions of self-sufficiency that we carry without noticing. Dua teaches you, quietly but consistently, that strength does not come from pretending you can handle everything. It comes from recognizing who actually handles everything. And as you engage in this act repeatedly, you begin to notice a shift. Your heart becomes a little less attached to the world, a little less fearful of uncertainty, a little more comfortable with surrender. This surrender is not a passive resignation, it is an active trust. It is a conscious declaration that even if life feels chaotic, there is a source of stability you can always return to. This is why many people find peace immediately after making dua, even if nothing changes externally. The act itself aligns your inner world with divine guidance. It reorganizes your emotional weight, redistributes your anxiety, and reminds you that you are not alone in navigating the complexity of your life. And there is a deeper wisdom here. Sometimes the blessing you are asking for is too heavy for the heart you currently have. Sometimes the risk of the blessing is greater than the reward unless you are spiritually prepared. Allah, in His mercy, does not simply hand you what you want. He shapes you into someone who can responsibly handle what you want. Dua becomes the tool of that shaping. Through longing, patience, and persistence, your heart is stretched in ways that increase its capacity to hold the coming blessing without collapsing under its weight. Think about how the heart transforms through repeated supplication. It becomes more resilient because it learns to endure uncertainty. It becomes more hopeful because it learns to expect good from Allah. It becomes more emotionally intelligent because it learns to observe its own needs and fears. It becomes more spiritually anchored because it develops a habit of returning to Allah rather than spiraling outward into worry. This transformation is not superficial, it penetrates the deepest layers of your identity. And what is remarkable is that this inner transformation often prepares the very circumstances you are waiting for. When your heart changes, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your environment changes. And when your environment changes, the dua that once felt distant begins to draw nearer. What looked like a delay was actually an internal preparation that slowly made you capable of living the answer. So when you feel frustrated that your dua has not yet shifted your external world, look inward and ask what it has already begun to shift within you. Perhaps the very change you are searching for has already started, just not where you expected. Because the purpose of dua is not only to bring something to your life, but to bring something out of you: humility, resilience, perspective, gratitude, and a deeper awareness of your connection with Allah. And if that inner transformation is already happening, then the dua is already being answered. So remember this: the blessing you seek may be waiting for the person you are becoming. Become that person, and watch how everything you asked for begins moving toward you. There is a profound truth that many hearts struggle to internalize. Allah never returns a dua empty-handed. We tend to imagine the answer in one narrow form, the exact outcome we envisioned at the time we desired, delivered in the way we imagined. And when life unfolds differently, we assume the dua was ignored, but that assumption comes from a limited perspective. Allah's response is never limited to the shape of your request. In reality, His answer often exceeds the boundaries of what you asked for, reaching further, deeper, and wider than you could have conceived. When you make dua, you are not simply asking for a single outcome. You are opening the door for Allah to give you something better, something safer, or something more enduring than what you initially hoped for. Sometimes the blessing arrives in the form you requested, but many times it arrives as protection from a harm you did not know was on its way. Sometimes it arrives as emotional resilience that prepares you for a future challenge. Sometimes it arrives through a redirection, one that feels disappointing in the moment, but reveals itself as a far greater mercy in hindsight. And sometimes the answer is saved entirely for the next life, where the reward for that dua returns as something far more valuable and permanent than anything this world could have offered. The human tendency is to judge the effectiveness of a dua by what we can measure. Did I receive what I asked for? Did the situation improve? Did the path open the way I wanted? But Allah's system is not confined to our metrics. If you knew the full tapestry of your life, every unseen danger, every hidden test, every chain reaction triggered by your choices, you would understand why certain duas must be answered differently. Sometimes the answer is a blessing that appears disguised as a setback. Sometimes it is a closed door that prevents you from walking into a storm. Sometimes it is a delayed opportunity that comes at a moment when your heart is finally ready to handle it with grace, humility, and gratitude. And there is another layer to this. Allah responds to the sincerity of your dua by giving you what you need, not merely what you want. A want fulfills a moment, a need fulfills a destiny. You may ask for ease, but He gives you strength. You may ask for a path, but He gives you clarity. You may ask for success, but He gives you wisdom. And with wisdom, you eventually achieve success in a way that benefits you both spiritually and emotionally. Every response is tailored to your ultimate good, not your temporary comfort. This is why the believer never loses hope in dua. You are speaking to the one who knows the full script, not just the scene you're currently in. You are handing your desires to the one who sees where they will lead, not just how they feel in the present. And when you trust that His responses are always superior to your requests, you stop fearing that your dua will be wasted. Because with Allah, nothing is wasted, not your words, not your tears, not your longing, not your silence. Not your waiting. Even the dua that seems unanswered is simply answered in a way you have not yet recognized. So as you continue your journey, remind yourself that every supplication you ever made has already been acknowledged. Every plea has already been processed. Every whisper has already been carried to the one who never forgets. And His response, whether immediate, delayed, transformed, or saved for the next life, is always better than what you imagined. Hold on to that truth. No dua made from the heart is ever lost. It is only waiting for the moment when its wisdom becomes clear.